For laying your hands on my wife, you must leave my house!
I have always loved you as my real son, not an adopted, so why not listen to me?
Rain hammered the Vaughn mansion like judgment itself. Inside, beneath crystal chandeliers worth more than most houses, Alaric Vaughn, 36, self-made billionaire, the man who once crawled out of a foster system with nothing, pointed one steady finger toward the front gate. Get out. Nia Freeman stood before him. 68 years old. The woman who had cleaned offices on bleeding knees to fund his first business loan. The woman who had read him stories through a cracked bedroom door when nightmares came. The woman who had chosen him when no one else would. She clutched a single suitcase. Inside, folded with the care of ritual, was an old framed photograph of her late husband, the only father Alaric had ever known. Tears carved channels down her dark cheeks. Not the tears of a woman defeated. The tears of a mother watching her son become a stranger before her eyes. Alaric, please. I said get out. He did not shout. Billionaires learn early that power needs no volume. But his voice carried the finality of a door closing forever. Nia looked past him. Up the grand staircase, where Seraphine Vaughn stood in shadow. Beautiful. Fragile. Watching. She's lying to you, son. Security. Two men in black appeared at Nia's elbows. She did not resist as they took her arms. She only held his gaze, the same gaze she had held when he was 6 years old and terrified of thunder, when she had promised him no storm lasts forever. At the threshold, the rain swallowing her whole, she turned back. I may not have given birth to you, Alaric. Her voice barely rose above the storm. But I loved you every day of your life. The gates closed behind her with a sound like a coffin lid. Alaric stood motionless in the marble foyer, listening to the silence she left behind. Somewhere above, he heard his wife's footsteps retreat, soft, satisfied, gone. 3 months ago, he had been on his knees in gratitude for the woman he just threw into the rain. 3 months ago, he had called her Mom. And somewhere in the darkening house, a phone buzzed with a text message Alaric would not see for hours, a message from a doctor he trusted, confirming an appointment his wife had scheduled under a false name. But that comes later. Welcome to the billionaire's vault, where the price of power is always paid in blood, and the ones who love you most are the first to be betrayed. If stories about wealth, deception, and the families we destroy make your heart race, hit that like button right now. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. I read every single one. And subscribe, because the vault only opens for those who dare to look inside. First, you need to understand how a son who had everything became a man who destroyed the only person who ever truly had his back. 29 years earlier, a little boy sat alone in a foster agency waiting room. He did not cry. Children who survive the system learn that tears are currency with no value. He simply stared at the linoleum floor, counting the cracks, waiting for the next disappointment. Malcolm Freeman changed that. He was not wealthy. He was not powerful. He was a mechanic with grease under his fingernails and a laugh that filled rooms. His wife Nia stood beside him, and when she knelt to meet the boy's eyes, she did not smile the way adults smile at children they pity. She smiled the way someone smiles at a person they have been waiting their whole life to find. What's your name, sweetheart? He did not answer. He had learned that names were information, and information was leverage. Malcolm sat on the floor beside him. Right there. In the waiting room. A grown man in a worn jacket, sitting cross-legged on institutional tile, until the boy finally looked up. I'm Malcolm. This is Nia. We lost our little girl last year. She was 6. Same age as you. He paused. We still have a lot of love left. It doesn't fit in our house anymore. We were wondering if you might help us carry some of it. The boy said nothing, but his hand, small and uncertain, found Nia's. They named him Alaric. Nia chose it from a book she had read to her daughter, a story about a king who was lost and then found. For 5 years, they were a family. Not a wealthy family. Not a perfect one, but a real one. Malcolm taught Alaric to fix engines. Nia taught him that love was not a feeling, it was a decision you made every morning when you woke up. Then Malcolm got sick. The diagnosis came in winter. The death came in spring. Nia sat beside his hospital bed, holding his hand, while Alaric, 11 years old, already too familiar with loss, stood in the doorway, watching his second father prepare to leave. Malcolm's last words were not to Nia. They were to the boy. "Promise me something, Alaric." "I promise. Your mother is going to need you. She's strong, but even strong people need someone to be strong for them. Can you do that?" "I promise." Malcolm died on a Tuesday. Nia went back to work on Wednesday. She was 52 years old. She cleaned offices in buildings where men in suits ignored her existence. She worked night shifts at a diner where drunks left quarters for tips. She came home with hands cracked from cleaning fluid, knuckles swollen, back bent, and she still made breakfast every morning, still asked about his homework, still read him stories through the cracked bedroom door when the nightmares came. One evening, Alaric, now 17, tall and sharp-eyed, found her at the kitchen table. She was counting cash. Small bills. Worn and folded and precious. "What's that for?" She did not look up. "Your future." "Mom." "Malcolm believed in you, Alaric. He believed you would build something." She finally met his eyes. "I believe it too. Now go to bed. I have another shift." He watched her leave that night. The bus came at 11:47 p.m. She would return at 5:30 a.m. She would make his breakfast. She would go to her day job. She would do this for 3 more years. The cash became a loan. The loan became a business. The business became an empire. By 30, Alaric Vaughn was worth 9 figures. By 32, 11. By 34, he could have bought the building where his mother once scrubbed toilets, and he did, just to demolish it. He brought her to the mansion on a Saturday. She walked through the marble foyer in shoes she had owned for 6 years, carrying the same battered suitcase she had used when she fled her childhood home at 16. "You didn't have to do this," she said. "You didn't have to do what you did," he replied. "But you did. Now let me do this." For 2 years, she lived like a queen who had forgotten she was royalty. She gardened. She cooked. She called her son every evening to ask if he had eaten. He always said yes, even when he hadn't. Then Seraphine entered the picture. She was beautiful in the way that made men forget to breathe. 34 years old, educated in Paris, raised in old money that had long since evaporated. She met Alaric at a charity gala. She spilled wine on his jacket. She apologized with a smile that suggested she was not sorry at all. He married her 6 months later. Nia watched the wedding from the front row. She told herself she was happy. She told herself that Seraphine's smile was genuine, that her warmth was real, that the way she called her mom was not performance. For 3 years, Seraphine played the role perfectly. She brought Nia tea in the mornings. She asked about Malcolm. She listened to stories about Alaric's childhood with the patience of a saint. She never became pregnant, despite trying, or so she claimed. Medical tests showed both husband and wife were healthy. Yet no child ever came. Nia told herself it was not her concern. She told herself a mother's love included respecting boundaries. She told herself this until the afternoon she found Seraphine collapsed in the bathroom, feverish and shaking. Alaric was overseas. Seoul. A summit that would determine the next $1 billion of his empire. Nia became the nurse. For 3 days, she barely slept. She changed compresses. She forced broth between pale lips. She held Seraphine's hand when the fever dreams came, and in one of those dreams, Seraphine whispered a name. A man's name. Not Alaric's. Nia said nothing. She wrote it down. On the 4th day, Seraphine's fever broke. Nia helped her to the bath, supporting her weight, adjusting the water temperature with the practiced hands of a woman who had done this before, who had held a dying child and learned the temperature of mercy. That was when she saw it. A scar. Low on Seraphine's abdomen. Faded but unmistakable. The horizontal line. The precise placement. Nia had seen this scar before. She had bathed her own daughter through leukemia treatments, had held her through surgeries, had memorized the geography of a body that failed despite every prayer. This was not an accident scar. This was a cesarean section. Seraphine. Her voice was gentle, questioning. What happened here? Seraphine's body went rigid. For 1 second, barely a heartbeat, her eyes showed something Nia had never seen there before. Fear. An accident. Years ago. Before I met Alaric. She pulled the robe closed with hands that shook. Please don't mention it. It's painful. Embarrassing. Nia nodded. She said nothing more. But she noticed. She noticed how Seraphine stopped calling her mom the next day. How the tea stopped appearing. How the smiles became thinner, colder, directed at spaces just beside Nia's face rather than her eyes. She noticed the staff. The housekeeper who had once chatted freely now avoided her gaze. The gardener who had shared tomato seeds now found reasons to work on the far side of the estate. Something was shifting. Nia could feel it in her bones, the same way she had felt Malcolm's illness before the doctors spoke, the same way she had felt the foster system's cruelty before the social workers admitted it. She began to watch. 2 weeks after the scar, she found the medication. She was not snooping. She was organizing Seraphine's closet. The woman had asked her to, a strange request given the new distance between them, when a bottle fell from a shoebox on the top shelf. Nia caught it. Read the label. Search the name on her phone in the bathroom with the door locked. Contraceptives. Not fertility treatments. Not prenatal vitamins. Contraceptives. The kind that required daily discipline. The kind that explained why 3 years of trying had produced nothing. Nia sat on the bathroom floor, the bottle in her palm, and understood 2 things at once. First, Seraphine did not want children with Alaric. Second, Seraphine would destroy anyone who knew. She should have told him immediately. She should have called Soul, shattered his summit, forced the truth into light. But she hesitated. Because she was a mother, and mothers protect their children from pain even when the truth would save them. That hesitation cost her everything. Seraphine struck first. It began with whispers. Late-night phone calls to Alaric overseas. Nia's voice, soft and concerned, became criticism in Seraphine's retelling. Nia's questions about meals became disrespect. Nia's very presence became never truly accepting me, Alaric. She never had a child of her own. How could she understand what we need? The words were surgical. They found the wound Alaric had carried since childhood, the quiet fear that Nia's love was a replacement, conditional, borrowed rather than owned. He dismissed the first complaint. He dismissed the second. But the third landed differently. Because Seraphine delivered it not with anger, but with tears. Not with demand, but with vulnerability. She looks at me like I'm an intruder, Alaric. Like I'm pretending to be part of a family I don't deserve. He remembered being 6 years old, standing in that foster agency, waiting to be chosen. He remembered Nia's hand finding his. He told himself Seraphine was wrong. But part of him, the part that still woke at 3 a.m. wondering if he had earned his place, whispered that maybe she was right. Meanwhile, Seraphine built her fortress. She bribed staff with money they desperately needed. She threatened others with jobs they could not lose. She cultivated witnesses who would swear to things they had never seen. She recorded conversations, edited them, manufactured context from silence. She staged the injuries last. It happened on a Thursday. Alaric was due home from Seoul on Friday. Seraphine provoked an argument with Nia in the kitchen, something about a broken teacup, something so small Nia barely registered the hostility until Seraphine's voice rose, sharp and accusing. You've never wanted me here. You've always resented me. Seraphine, that's not. Admit it. You think I'm not good enough for him. You think I'm using him. Nia reached out. A gesture of peace. Seraphine flinched backward, hard, theatrical, and struck the counter. The sound was loud. The bruise that bloomed on her arm was immediate. The recording device hidden in her pocket captured Nia's hand extended, Seraphine's body recoiling, the crash of porcelain. Nia did not see the device. She only saw her daughter-in-law's tears, her trembling, her whispered, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said anything. She tried to comfort her. That comfort became assault in the edited footage. By Friday evening, the conspiracy was complete. 3 staff members prepared statements. Security footage from the kitchen had mysteriously corrupted. The teacup lay in an evidence bag, presented to Alaric alongside his wife's bruised arm and tearful testimony. He walked into the mansion believing he was coming home. He found a war zone. Seraphine met him at the door. Not in her usual elegance. In a robe. No makeup. The bruise, livid, purple, unmistakable, displayed like evidence in a trial she had already won. She's been getting worse, Alaric. I didn't want to tell you while you were away. I thought I could handle it. He watched the recording. Heard the witnesses. Saw the corrupted footage reports. Every piece of evidence pointed to one conclusion. His mother had been tormenting his wife for months. Nia stood at the top of the stairs, watching. She did not descend. She did not defend herself. Because she understood something Alaric had forgotten, that truth without trust was just noise, and her son no longer trusted her enough to hear. Mom? His voice cracked. Is this true? She looked at Seraphine. At the performance so perfect it could have been real. At the woman who had hidden a child, prevented pregnancy, manipulated medical records, and built an empire of lies in the house Nia had helped fill with love. No, Alaric. Quiet. Certain. It is not true. Then explain the recording. Explain the witnesses. Explain why my wife is terrified of you. Nia said nothing. Because explaining would mean destroying him. Because a mother's love sometimes meant carrying the lie so her child could keep believing in love a little longer. Get out. The words came from a stranger wearing her son's face. She packed in silence. One suitcase. The photograph of Malcolm. She did not take the jewelry he had given her. She did not take the credit cards. She took only what she had brought, her dignity, her memories, and the love that had survived 2 dead husbands, poverty, and every storm that had tried to break her. At the gate, she turned back. I may not have given birth to you, Alaric, but I loved you every day of your life. The gates closed. Here's what breaks my heart about this story, and maybe yours too. Nia loved Alaric enough to let him destroy her. She chose his peace over her own truth. That's not weakness. That's the kind of love most of us spend our whole lives hoping someone will show us, and most of us never recognize when it's standing right in front of us. If you've ever loved someone who couldn't see it, hit that like button. If you've ever been the one who looked away too late, comment, I see you now. Subscribe, because the vault holds more stories about the love we break and the grace that rebuilds it. Nia walked. The rain soaked through her coat. The bus took her to a part of the city she had not seen in years, the part where people slept in doorways and warmed their hands over trash can fires. She found a community shelter. The bed was a cot. The blanket was thin. The woman at the desk asked no questions, only handed her a meal ticket and pointed toward the dining hall. Nia did not cry. She had learned long ago that tears were currency with no value. She slept. She woke. She volunteered in the kitchen because even broken, she could still feed someone. Even betrayed, she could still choose love. Weeks passed. Alaric believed he had done the right thing. He told himself the mansion was peaceful now. He told himself Seraphine was healing. He told himself the silence where his mother had been was not absence, but resolution. He almost believed it. Until Elena found him. She was young. 23. A housekeeper who had accepted Seraphine's money because her mother needed surgery and the insurance had lapsed. She had signed a false statement. She had sworn to things she had never seen. And every night since, she had woken at 3 a.m. with the taste of ash in her mouth. Mr. Vaughn. She found him in the study, alone, a glass of whiskey untouched beside his laptop. The story you were told. It doesn't add up. He looked up. Something in her voice, not accusation, but grief, made him set the glass aside. What do you mean? I mean. She twisted her hands. I mean the recording. I was there. I heard the original argument. It was about a teacup. Your mother never touched her. I saw it. Elena, if you're trying to. Mrs. Vaughn paid me. She paid all of us. The words tumbled out, desperate and relieved. I needed the money. I'm not innocent. But the story you were told is not what happened. And I can't sleep anymore, Mr. Vaughn. I can't sleep knowing what I helped do to that woman. She left before he could respond. Left him with doubt where certainty had been. For 3 days, he did nothing. He told himself Elena was lying. He told himself grief was making her unstable. He told himself his wife was innocent, his mother was guilty, and the world was simple. Then he found the inconsistency. A date on a security log. The corrupted kitchen footage was marked as lost on Thursday at 9:47 p.m. But the backup server, the one even Seraphine didn't know about, the one Alaric had installed after a corporate espionage scare, showed a manual deletion command entered at 9:43 p.m. For minutes before the supposed corruption. Someone had deleted it deliberately, then reported it as lost. His hands shook as he pulled financial records. Transfers from Seraphine's personal account. Regular. Substantial. Directed to staff members who had testified against his mother. Directed to Dr. Lucien Hale, the family physician. The man who had delivered the fertility test results. The man who had reassured them both, year after year, that they were healthy, that patience was key, that science sometimes moved slower than hope. Alaric pulled every record, every appointment, every prescription. The fertility tests were fabrications. Dr. Hale had never tested Seraphine's fertility at all. He had must have known about the contraceptives. He had known about the scar. He had known about the child. The child. Alaric found the birth certificate at 2:17 a.m. Sealed, hidden in a trust fund Seraphine had established under a false name. A boy. Born 7 years ago. Father listed as unknown. But the medical records attached showed Dr. Hale's signature on the delivery. The dates aligned with Seraphine's year abroad before meeting Alaric. The photographs, hidden in the same trust, showed Seraphine holding a newborn, Hale beside her, both smiling like a family. They had remained connected. They had planned together. They had married Alaric not for love, but for access, for the empire that would eventually pass to their son. Every anniversary, every tender moment, every whispered, I love you, calculated, purchased, performed. Alaric sat in his study until dawn. He did not weep for his marriage. He wept for the woman he had thrown into the rain. The conspiracy unraveled quickly after that. Lawyers. Investigators. The truth, once pulled, came apart like rotten fabric. Seraphine fought. Dr. Hale threatened. But Alaric had built his fortune on knowing when to hold and when to destroy. He held nothing back. Divorce. Criminal charges. Professional ruin. Both faced consequences that would outlast their freedom. None of it brought him peace. Because the truth about his wife was not what broke him. What broke him was remembering Nia's face at the gate. The photograph of Malcolm clutched in her hand. The words she had spoken, not in anger, not in accusation, but in love that expected nothing back. I loved you every day of your life. He began to search. Not with his company's resources. Not with private investigators or media campaigns. He went himself. Shelters. Churches. Community centers. Old neighborhoods where he had once been poor enough to need them. He knocked on doors. He showed her photograph. He asked strangers if they had seen a woman with kind eyes and cracked hands who had once made the world feel safe. Month after month. Nothing. Until a Tuesday in October. A shelter kitchen on the south side. He had been there before 3 times, and always left disappointed. But this time, as he stood in the serving line with the other volunteers, he saw her. She was not at the front. Not in charge. She was at the back, washing dishes in a plastic tub, her sleeves rolled up, her hair graying at the temples. She moved with the same efficiency he remembered from childhood, the same economy of motion that came from years of doing necessary things with insufficient time. She did not see him. Not at first. He watched her serve a young mother with 2 children. Watched her press an extra roll of bread into the woman's hand. Watched her smile. Not the smile of someone who had forgiven, but the smile of someone who had simply never stopped loving. Alaric's knees hit the floor. Not dramatically. Not for show. His legs simply stopped holding him. He knelt there in the shelter kitchen, surrounded by strangers who did not know his name or his fortune, and he wept like the 6-year-old boy he had once been, the boy who had waited in a foster agency, counting cracks in linoleum, until someone chose him. Mom. Nia turned. For a long moment, she said nothing. Her expression did not change. She did not rush to him. She did not lift him. She simply looked at him with the same eyes that had seen every version of him, the lost child, the hungry teenager, the arrogant billionaire, the cruel son, and had loved them all. Get up, Alaric. I can't. I don't deserve. Get up. Her voice was gentle but firm. The same voice that had made him eat vegetables, do homework, believe in himself when no evidence supported the belief. This floor is dirty. And you were raised better than this. He rose. Unsteady. Ashamed. She handed him a ladle. Lines forming. People are hungry. He stared at the utensil. At her. At the life she had built without him, not in bitterness, not in revenge, but in service to strangers who needed what she had always given freely. He took the ladle. He stood beside her. He served soup to people who did not know his name, who would never know what he had done or what he had lost, who simply needed to eat. They worked in silence. Side by side. Mother and son. Stranger and stranger. When the line ended, she finally spoke. You found the truth. Yes. And you punished them. Yes. Good. She dried her hands on a towel worn thin with use. Now what will you do with the rest of your life? He had no answer. He had spent months searching for her, imagining the moment of reunion, constructing apologies in his head like architecture. But standing before her, he understood that words were insufficient. That forgiveness was not something asked for but something demonstrated. I want to learn, he said. What you tried to teach me. About love that doesn't keep score. About family that isn't blood. About showing up even when. He stopped. His voice broke. Even when the person you love throws you out. Nia was quiet for a long time. Then she reached into her pocket and pulled out the photograph. Malcolm. Smiling in his mechanic's uniform, grease on his cheek, love in his eyes. He believed in you, Alaric. Not because you were his blood. Because you were his choice. She pressed the photograph into his hand. I've carried this through every storm. Every betrayal. Every night I wondered if I had failed you. And do you know what I realized? He shook his head. Love is not about being perfect. It's about being present. Even when presence hurts. Even when the person you love cannot see you. You are not my obligation, Alaric. You are my joy. And joy does not stop because the object of it forgets its name. She turned back to the dishes. He stood there, photograph in hand, understanding for the first time since Malcolm's death what family truly meant. Not blood. Not obligation. Not even forgiveness. Choice. Nia returned to the mansion. Not as a guest. Not as a resident to be tolerated. But as the heart of the Vaughn family, the woman who had built it from nothing, who had sustained it through loss, who had survived its cruelty and chosen love anyway. Alaric sold the mansion 6 months later. Built a smaller house. Hired no staff who had known Seraphine. Created a foundation in Malcolm's name for foster children aging out of the system, because he remembered being the boy who counted cracks in linoleum, waiting to be chosen. He never married again. He never needed to. He had learned that the greatest wealth was not in empire, but in the hands that had once held his through every storm. And on quiet evenings, when the sun set over the garden Nia still tended, he would find her on the porch with Malcolm's photograph, speaking to a man who had been gone for decades, but had never truly left. Thank you, Alaric would whisper. Nia would smile. Not because the pain was gone, but because love, once chosen, could survive even the cruelest forgetting. And that, perhaps, is the only miracle that matters. If you made it to the end of this story, you are the reason I keep opening the vault. This is not just entertainment. This is a reminder that the people who love us most are often the ones we hurt first, and that grace is not about being perfect, but about being present. If this reached you, hit that like button like your life depends on it. Comment, I choose love if you're carrying someone who doesn't know you're still there. And subscribe, because the next story waits for no one, and neither does the truth.